This is a gauge stick. It's a gauge stick. It sits between Alright, so welcome to the first video of my new YouTube series, all about cello-related topics, as you can imagine. And I thought, what better way to begin than to talk about my practice essentials. These are by no means things I would consider to be essential for absolutely every cellist. They're essential for my own purposes and my own practice. And by essential, I mean anything that I use on a daily basis. So pretty much every day or whenever I practice. And so that's why I consider them to be essential. So the first thing I want to talk about, and this is going to be a little bit controversial, so I don't know why I'm starting with it, but it's just my most used item, I guess, aside from my cello and bow. So the first essential is actually, believe it or not, my iPad. Ever since I got an iPad, 3 or 4 years ago, my life as a musician has been, well, let's just say that it's completely transformed my life as a musician. So all of my sheet music is just in the one location. I don't have to carry around a heavy bag of books. I don't have to make copies of sheet music. I don't have to carry around pages and pages of sheet music. It's all just in the one location. There's this tremendous app called Fourscore, and it holds all your music. You just upload it directly onto Fourscore, or you can download a PDF from IMSLP and import it into Fourscore. There are many ways to go about it. But it's an amazing app, and it's even better if you have an Apple Pencil or some kind of a stylus pen with which you can annotate the music. You can annotate it in different colors. You can very easily erase mistakes. You don't have to erase holes into the music like you would with a conventional eraser, and it's kind of made my practicing so much more efficient and stress-free. So I pretty much use an iPad every day, and it's nice to just have one location where all my music is contained, so that's my first essential, and I would consider it essential. You might not. I know that it's very expensive. They don't exactly give them away, so I mean, you can definitely practice without one, but for me, it's an essential. And that leads me to my next item, which is my music stand. And you would think, oh yeah, of course, a music stand, duh. Well, for many years, I simply had a wire stand, and it would always fall over. Writing on music on my wire stand would always be difficult. Sometimes I'd have to get on my knees, and then I'd try to write on the music and the stand would fall over. Especially if you have an iPad, which is kind of bulky, you want something that's a little more sturdy in its design. So the stand that I have is actually a Manhasset music stand, which is the kind of stand that you see in most colleges and conservatories around America. Again, they don't exactly give these away. They're not cheap by any means, but it's super sturdy. It doesn't fall over. And so if you have an iPad or some kind of tablet, even if you have paper as your sheet music, it's so much easier to write on. And if you do a lot of writing on your music when you practice, which I assume you would be doing, it's much nicer to have a stand that doesn't fall over. So that's my next essential, and I absolutely use that every day. Third essential, my iPhone apps. And I promise I'm going to get to some cello stuff, some cello hardware, but I'm going kind of in order of the things that I use very frequently. I have 2 apps on my iPhone that I use pretty much on a daily basis. One of them is Tunable, which is a tuning app, and it's a very sophisticated tuning app. If you download it, you'll see that the waveform that it displays is super sensitive to any tone that you produce on your instrument, and it fluctuates very precisely. You can change the frequency to 440, 441, 2, whatever you prefer. I mainly use it just to generate an A at the beginning of my practice to tune to, but you can of course use it as kind of a standard drone to practice scales with, or practice passages out of your repertoire. It's a really, really cool app, probably my favorite tuning app, and there are dozens out there, of course. That's an essential app that I use every day. The other app I use every day is Tempo, which is a metronome app. Again, there are many useful metronome apps. This is my favorite. I think there are 2 versions out there. You can get one for free, and you can also get a better version if you pay maybe $1 or $2. I think it's worth it. You can change the time signature to all sorts of simple or complex time signatures. You can change the beat patterns. You can add accents. You can single out beats like 1, 3, 2, and 4, or whatever beats you want. And it's very easy to just manually tap out a certain tempo that you're looking for. Really cool app, and again, I would consider that essential because I use it every day. Now let's get to the actual cello hardware, so to speak. So aside from a cello and bow and strings that I assume most of you have if you're watching this, I would say my next essential that I certainly use every day, and I wish most cellists would use every day, is a cloth or some kind of a cleaning rag to clean your cello with. So this is the one I've got. A simple cloth, and every day when I finish playing, I just wipe down the strings to get the rosin off. Sometimes I wipe down the body of the cello to get any dust off the face of the cello, and believe it or not, that does improve the sound. I don't know if it's just a mental thing, but whenever I do that, whenever I clean off the dust from the cello, to me it sounds much clearer and brighter and just better, generally. But the most important thing is to get the rosin off the strings. You'd be shocked how many times I've seen cellists with this excessive buildup of rosin at the end of the fingerboard. Just layers of rosin, just from total neglect of cleaning. And I just don't understand. I mean, there's nothing worse than traveling into the upper registers of the cello and getting sticky rosin on your fingers. Then it makes shifting so much more complicated. It's just kind of gross. So try to get the rosin off. Some people advocate using steel wool or some kind of alcohol swab to get the rosin off the strings. I don't think it's necessary as long as you're consistent about cleaning it with a cloth. If you have excess buildup from a significant amount of time, then I think using an alcohol swab maybe to clean the strings is fine, as long as you don't get it on the varnish. I've had that happen before and it's not good. It damages the varnish. So as long as you're careful. So that's an essential. I use this every day. Next essential is a mute. You never know when you're going to need a mute in your repertoire. The mute that I use is a standard taut mute. But this is a smaller mute, so it sits over the one string. You can also get the bigger version that usually sits in the middle of the bridge. If you get the one that sits over one string, I think it's better in the sense you can choose which string over which you put it. So I usually put it over the G string or the C string, depending on the color or the sound that I'm going for. Usually it just sits above the G string. And I think it's a standard mute. There are other mutes out there, but you want to have a mute, right? I mean, you just never know when you're going to need it. And along those lines, you probably want a practice mute. I never really I was never really that into these until recently when I got a noise complaint from upstairs, and so I've been practicing exclusively with this Artino practice mute for about the last week or so, and at first it was really bothering me because it changes the response of the cello quite significantly, but I'm getting used to it and I kind of like it now. You know, it's not so bad, and I felt, you know, I've got to compromise considering that everyone's working from home nowadays with this whole pandemic situation, and I don't want to make the situation worse. You know, I want to live in harmony with people. So, and that being said, you also never know when you're going to be traveling and you're in a hotel and the walls are thin and you need to get work done you need to get work done without creating much noise. I think having a practice mute is just good to have. So I would consider it essential, even if you don't use it that much. I didn't start using this until very recently, but it has been absolutely essential recently. So, practice mute. I have one really cool essential. I don't use it every day, but it's been an essential accessory for me. But it's not something that's commonly found. But this is a gauge stick. It's a gauge stick. It sits between the fingerboard and the bridge. It should sit perfectly flush between the fingerboard and the bridge. And this was made by an instrument restorer in Ann Arbor when I was getting the varnish touched up on this cello. His name's Mark Norfleet. Tremendous instrument restorer and just an all-around intelligent guy. Seek him out. He makes these for whichever instrument he's working on. And what it does is it ensures that the bridge is straight and that the instrument is sounding its best. Because you never know when the bridge might move even a millimeter or so just from nudging it, or or from travel and all that stuff. You just never know. So I check this periodically just to make sure that my instrument's sounding its best. So I think this is a really neat device. Perhaps not essential. I don't know what I'm going to do now since I live on the other side of the planet, but it's really benefited me, I think, in the sense that it's made me way less paranoid about whether or not my bridge is moved, because I can check. I can check for consistency. So my cello has sounded pretty consistent the last few years, I would say. Last essential in my cello case, rosin. I use the Melos rosin, dark. Honestly, not that picky when it comes to rosin. I was just curious about this one, so I've been using it for a few years, and I go through rosin super slowly. I think it's pretty hard to use up a full cake of rosin. It takes years for me. I mean, look, I've marked a couple X's into this. Usually what happens with me is I accidentally drop my rosin on the ground and then it shatters to pieces. I hate it when it's happened at least twice, and that's usually when I have to get another rosin. Before this one I had an Andrea rosin which comes in a box and it's in a plastic container, so the fact that I broke that one is kind of baffling, but I just accidentally dropped it. I didn't really like that one anyway. It was super sticky. Some people love it and they swear by it, but it's so sticky, and I like to rosin every day before I practice, so having something that sticky, I also felt like it was maybe damaging the hair a little bit. Of course, it's personal taste. Some people are very particular about their rosin, what kind of rosin they use, but I'm probably going to get a different rosin the next one I get. I'm totally an advocate of just trying out different things, trying out different strings, things like that. So that is an essential. I use rosin pretty much every day before I practice. It's just part of my routine. So I think that covers it. That pretty much covers it. Since you're going to be seeing a lot of my cello and bow, let me just tell you what they are. The cello is a Frank Ravetin, modern French cello, 2006. Gorgeous. Just look at the back here, just gorgeous back. And the bow that I use is a Rodney Moore. I don't know why I had to look at it to tell you. I already knew what it was. It's a Rodney Moore bow. I think he lives in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken. And the bow has served me just fine for a few years. I use it for everything. I just can't really afford multiple bows. Of course, I would love to have a different bow depending on the repertoire that I'm playing. I'd love to have a Baroque bow. I did play on a carbon fiber bow for 2 years, pretty much, almost 2 years exclusively, because I couldn't afford anything else. And I performed many concerts on a carbon fiber bow. I played Bach on that bow. I played Britten. I played chamber concerts. I played concertos. I played a lot of concerts on a carbon fiber bow, and I like to think that it was beneficial having to use a carbon fiber bow for a while and trying to find colors and nuance with a carbon fiber bow. I think that pretty much covers all my essentials. So I'm going to be making more videos in the coming days and weeks about topics that I think are perhaps interesting or just generally useful to know about. Alright, stay tuned for the next video.